Welcome in, everyone, to another edition of the GSMC College Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. I'm your host, as always, Tommy Brzee. It is Thursday, August 15th around here, and we have a great show for you today. We're going to start talking a little bit about an interesting formula that Ralph Russo over at the AP kind of put out in there to figure out what's going to happen in this 12-team playoff. It's obviously going to be off the walls, but I'll try to decipher it using the formula that he gave us. Then we'll get into a couple of playoff hypotheticals. I have about 5 here. I think we're likely going to do this tomorrow as well because there's a number of ones that I just did not get a chance to get to in this one. Then we have some out-of-conference games that will define the playoff the most, so a very playoff-centric show, but the out-of-conference games, obviously, winning your conference will get you in there, so maybe it doesn't hold quite as much weight as it used to, but there's still some games that will definitely impact a lot of the conversations that will happen on Selection Sunday. Then we'll get into a little bit of fall camp intel. Stuff keeps flowing in, and we'll do it again tomorrow, I promise you that. Then we have a little bit of a hot take Thursday for you guys today, and more just kind of prepping you guys for the season, making sure you avoid this one very specific term. So we'll get to that at the very end, but before we jump in, I do want to remind you all, we get tons of questions and comments throughout the show, and we now have an easier way for you all to get your question on the screen. It used to be you had to go to gsmcpodcast.net. That is still an option if you would like to go over there, but it might just be a little bit easier to go down to the bottom of the chat there. You'll see a little dollar sign there, and you can just put in a super chat. Very, very easy. It'll pop up on the screen for me. We can have fun back and forth here, and that's always what we want here. We always want to be very interactive, so if you'd like to use that, you're more than welcome to. The gsmcpodcast.net page is still very much working, so you can use that as well. But definitely use that if you want to have kind of an interactive conversation here and get your name on the screen, which is always a good amount of fun. But let's get into this, because this is a very interesting conversation that when the AP poll comes out, you never really know what to make of it, right? You never really know how to unpack it. There are some trends that you can unpack, obviously, which we did a little bit earlier in the week, but it's hard to figure out, who's going to find their way to the top, who's going to find their way to the bottom, who's going to fall out, all that type of stuff. And we have an idea of what the playoff poll is going to be this upcoming year. We know what it's going to be if the AP poll is entirely right. If it does not miss a beat, this is what we're looking at. We're looking at Georgia, Ohio State, Florida State, and Utah as your conference champions. They are the highest ranked teams in all of those conferences. They would be the conference champions in this case. Oregon and Texas would be at the 5 and 6 spot, likely as the Big Ten and SEC runner-up. Then you would have teams like Alabama at 7. You would have Ole Miss, Notre Dame, Penn State, Michigan, and then Boise State was the group of 5 team that got the most votes. They were in the top 25, but I believe they got 47 votes to be in there. They are the group of 5 team, at least for the time being. So that's the chalk scenario. That's the scenario where everything goes the exact way that the AP poll voters said. That doesn't usually happen, let's just be totally honest. So there's a ton of things that, frankly, this would be an incredible matchup. I mean, we get an Oregon-Boise State rematch in Eugene. We get a Texas-Michigan rematch, but in Austin this time around, we get Penn State going down to Tuscaloosa. We'd have Notre Dame going down to Oxford, which would be a rather weird one, but definitely a really cool one to watch. You could get Oregon-Utah, a little Pac-12 matchup in the past, at least, in the second round there. So this would be a really, really cool thing. No two ways about that. But let's get into this formula, and let's start to change this quite a bit. And the formula is pretty simple, to be totally honest with you. You pick 4 teams from the top 5 teams in the country in the AP poll. You pick 2 from the 6 through 10 teams, 2 from the 11 through 20, which is a nightmare, and we'll get to that in a second. 1 from the 21 to 25 range, and then 3 unranked teams. So that's quite a few unranked teams that are going to be making it into the dance this year, and a couple of them are pretty much, or one of them, especially with the group of 5, has already been decided. That kind of adds to this a little bit, but at the end of the day, it is a very interesting conversation, and we're going to unpack it in this way. I have the poll here for you guys. You guys have seen it probably a million times at this point, but what we're going to do is we're going to go step by step. We're going to go through the top 5 teams. I'm going to pick my 4. Then we'll go to the 6 through 10, 11 through 20, and so on. So first we'll start with the top 5. I'm going to roll with the 4 that I already have in this thing. I have the top 4 teams in the country in Georgia, Ohio State, Oregon, and Texas going. I'm going to stick with that. I'm going to knock Bama out of this one. I kind of wanted to get a little bit crazy and put Bama in, take Oregon or Texas out, but at the end of the day, I'll roll with the teams that I already have in there. I'll keep those 4 teams alive. And Georgia would be the SEC champ, Ohio State Big Ten champ, the same exact thing actually that we just got into in the very chalk example. Then you got to take 2 from the 6 through 10 range, and there's some good teams here: Ole Miss, Notre Dame, Penn State, Michigan, Florida State. All of those teams absolutely have the playoff on their mind. All of those teams absolutely have the ability to not only get to the playoff but possibly win a national title. The teams that I picked are not easy, not by any means, but I kind of like the picks that I came up with. I'm going to go Florida State is going to win the ACC in this scenario, and Penn State will get a Big Ten at-large bid. So that would add 3 Big Ten teams. The Big 12 is still sitting, waiting for their team to get in, and that will have to wait a long while here, but we'll get into that here in a second. We're going to go 2 from 11 to 20 is definitely the toughest of the bunch. All of these teams are so good. All of these teams have different things that if they come together the right way, they're absolutely playoff teams. If they go the opposite direction, they're going to have a really tough season. So it's really hard to get a beat on this, and frankly, this was not an easy decision by any means. I'm going to keep Clemson and Tennessee. I'm going to decide that Clemson is going to be the ACC runner-up, and I think Tennessee is a good enough team, has so many things around them. James Pierce Jr., if Nico Iamaleava can hit the notes that he needs to hit, this is going to be a dangerous team, and I'll give them the nod here. There were a couple other teams that I wanted to put in there, maybe Kansas State as the Big 12 champion, which is actually what I have this upcoming year. So there are a number of different picks here, but wanted to get a little bit weird with it. Added Clemson, added Tennessee, and add a little bit of spice to this one. Now, we're left to the last 5 teams. We got to figure out which one team we want to pick from these 5. And frankly, this is maybe the toughest of the bunch, other than the 11 through 20, just because of the amount of teams. But you look at Arizona, a very dangerous team this upcoming year. There's no two ways about that. They absolutely have an ability to put together a really good offensive season, possibly, win a couple of shootouts here and there. Tacario Davis makes a couple of big plays on that back end, and you end up winning 10 games, going to the Big 12 championship, and giving yourself a shot to get into this thing. So I wouldn't say that's crazy by any means. Kansas is on the exact same wavelength, but it just comes down to Jalen Daniels being healthy. If he's healthy, this is one of the top teams in the conference. If he's not healthy, they're a 6-7 win team, just plain and simple. So definitely one of those teams that absolutely could hit and be a playoff team, might just not. USC, you're worried about that defense. There's no two ways about that. North Carolina State, you never really know how all of those transfer pieces, especially how important they are really going to come together once the games start. And then Iowa, I don't know about that offense. It still looks about what it looked like a year ago, and we'll see if they can improve, but I'm not overly confident in that. So the team that I'm picking is USC. I think they're a team that, frankly, I think there's a lot of people out there that think they have to do more than they have to do to pull this off. I think when you look at the defensive side of the ball, there's so many people talking about they have to improve, they have to get so much better, and frankly, they do. There's no two ways about that. They totally understand that, and that's one of the big-time reasons DeAnton Lynn's there and not Alex Grinch anymore. So that's a big-time thing for them, but regardless, I don't think they're as far as some people expect. They were a bad defense a year ago. There's no two ways about that, but Oklahoma had bad defenses and they went to the playoff, and it was a 4-team playoff, not a 12-team. So it's not like USC is, leaps and bounds away from possibly making this run. They need the defense to come along, and they need a couple of players to make some big-time plays. But at the end of the day, I think they were 115-ish in total defense a year ago. You bounce that up to 80, 70 in the country, you very well could be in this conversation. It's going to take a couple of bounces of balls in your direction, but at the end of the day, you definitely can pull this off. And it's a team that I'm warming up to more and more as we get closer to the season, and I am a little bit worried about that, I'll be totally honest, but definitely is a team that I think could get it done in this format where you got to pick someone from those bottom 5 teams. So went with USC there. Then we got to get 3 unranked teams, 3 teams that we have 9 here that have filled out the bracket so far. We need 3 more, and we got to figure out where they're going to come from. And the good news for me is I have not picked my Big 12 champion yet. I have not picked my Group of 5 representative, obviously, because they were not ranked in this poll. But the Big 12 champion, I'm going to roll with the team that I have playing in it but losing, Iowa State. I do think this is a team that has plenty going into this season, has so much ability on the outside at wide receiver that I think they're going to be as dangerous as really anyone in that entire conference. Then I got Virginia Tech, another team that I already have in the dance. I have them getting in as an at-large bid this time around, and I think there is a world in this. Say Virginia Tech knocks off Miami, but misses the ACC championship because they lose to Florida State and Clemson beats Florida State. That would put them in a tough spot, but at the end of the day, you're still an 11-1, 10-2 team that missed out on, a technicality, missed out on a tiebreaker. So I do think it would be one of those things that Virginia Tech is going to have plenty to say in that conference, and if you have plenty to say in any of the Power 4 conferences, you're going to be in this conversation. So those are the teams that I have, the 12 teams I have as we get into this, and I feel pretty good about this. It's a very weird group, no doubt about it. It's a little bit more chalky than what Andy Staples had on over in his page, so if you want to go check that out, you're more than welcome, but I feel good about this group. I think these are the teams that I look at them, and yes, some things need to go their way. Tennessee, Nico Iamaleava's got to play really good football. USC, you got to play better defense than you did a year ago. A number of things have to happen for these teams, but they're really dangerous, and I think all of them are capable of making this type of run. But let's get into the poll. We have the very bland one, the one that comes out from the AP poll, but the one that I have is a little bit different here. We got Clemson against Tennessee, a little run back of that Orange Bowl game where Joe Milton just lit the world on fire. Oregon against Tulane would be a really fun one up in Eugene. That would be all-time uniform battle, first of all, but would be a very, very cool thing to watch them go up there and try to knock them off. Tulane's a very dangerous team this upcoming year. Virginia Tech heading to Texas is a very weird matchup. I don't know if I ever thought I would see that, but would be a very cool one nonetheless. And then USC heading up to Penn State would be fun because they played in LA earlier in this year, so it would be very cool if they found their way back up to College Station for a little bit of a home and home in the middle of the season. But at the end of the day, it's going to be incredible. It's really hard to decipher what's going to happen in this 12-team playoff, but Ralph Russo did us a good favor here to try to figure out what that's going to be. I promise at the end of this, once we figure out who all's in the field, I will bring up all three of those examples. The AP poll one, the absolutely chalk one. I'll pull up the formula one. I'll pull up my predictions. We'll see which one did the best. We'll see which one had the best hit rate, because maybe that's a way that I go forward predicting these things as we go over the next couple of years. So definitely a really fun exercise. Really appreciate Ralph Russo and Andy Staples for putting it on my in my radar, because very, very fun. Definitely something that will kind of mix up the playoff in a way that you did not expect. Not an easy thing to do. So if you guys do it, please put your brackets in the comments, and I will absolutely unfold them, because it's a very, very fun thing and requires you to make some really hard decisions. But let's take our first break here, and when we come back, we're going to do some playoff hypotheticals, a ton of things that could happen this upcoming year that will really impact how the playoff unfolds, and I'll get to, I think, 5 of them right after this, so stick with us.